Welcome to the panel discussion on building out a domestic lithium resource. I'm Mike Whittaker, your moderator for the panel. I'm a scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and the director of the Lithium Resource Research and Innovation Center, or LiRRIC. We create new science and technology to improve the speed, efficiency, and sustainability of domestic lithium resources and supply chains. I'm incredibly excited to be joined by an esteemed panel of some of the foremost experts in domestic lithium resources and their just and equitable use. Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia represents California's 56th Assembly. He serves as the chair of the Select Committee on California's Lithium Economy. Assemblymember Garcia introduced California Assembly Bill 1657, which authorized the formation of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Lithium Extraction in California, which is colloquially known as the Lithium Valley Commission. Dr. Glenn Murfeld is Chief Technology Officer for Albemarle's Lithium Global Business Unit. His organization is helping grow lithium's position in leading lithium resources, cutting-edge separations, and materials technologies. Sylvia Paz is the elected chair of California's Blue Ribbon Commission on Lithium Extraction, to which she was appointed by California Governor Newsom. She is also the executive director of Alianza Coachella Valley. And Jonathan Weisgall is vice president for government relations for Berkshire Hathaway Energy Company, which is a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway. He also serves as chairman emeritus of the board of directors of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Technologies. Welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you for being here. The lithium industry is growing rapidly across the globe. It's estimated that we'll need up to 40 times more lithium than we currently produce to meet the demand from a battery market that is experiencing unprecedented expansion due to the need to store renewable energy from wind and solar. However, currently the US produces only a small fraction of the lithium that ends up in our cell phones, our computers, and our electric vehicles. My first question is to Assemblymember Garcia and to Chair Paz. Can you outline for us what is the opportunity for building out US lithium? Assemblymember Garcia, please.
Well, I think it became very evident, if it wasn't prior to a conversation that took place 2 weeks ago today, where our chair of the commission, Sylvia Paz, our great governor, Gavin Newsom, and our chief and commander, Joe Biden, discussed this amazing opportunity that is presenting itself through the lens of national security, through the diversification of domestic products being made in the United States, and also the objectives of meeting our climate and renewable energy goals for the future. We're excited that this conversation has surrounded many opportunities in our own region that will create an economic transformation and put California once again in the leading seat to be able to make this transition to electrify not just our transportation system, but create a much more reliable electrical system in California and throughout the country. For the people that I represent in the Imperial County and Eastern Coachella Valley, I know that the words game changer are often used to describe something new, exciting, and that could truly be transformational, but this in fact will be a game changer for the people who live in our region, and it's exciting to be able to be part of the conversation as it's taking place.
Chair Paz, would you like to build on that?
Yes, thank you. The opportunity for the communities, as the Assembly member mentioned, could be a game changer when we're looking at developing lithium and all of the resources that exist right in our backyard. The Lithium Valley Commission was, it's one of its kind, and I want to thank the Assembly member for his vision, right, in bringing in industry, community members, CBOs at the table, along with government. And I think it really honors the vision that we've been asking for a long time about having a seat at the table. And with the creation of the LBC and the governor's framework for high road jobs, the region has the opportunity to show how this can be done right. And I think there's a lot of pressure as we're talking about climate change to ensure that we're not doing it at the expense of environmental justice communities, similar to those that are surrounding the region, but that we do it with and to the benefit of these environmental justice communities. So what does it mean to do it right? I think there's three key elements. One, that there is access to opportunity and that's realistic, again, for the surrounding communities of the Salton Sea. So that may mean infrastructure, transportation, houses, that we can achieve ecological and community health. And the third is that we have opportunities to good paying jobs that are going to be staying local. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Paz. My next question is for Dr. Murfeld and Mr. Weiskall. What needs to be done at the local, state, and federal levels to ensure that the cost of lithium production in the US becomes competitive with international sources? Dr. Murfeld, I'll let you take that first.
Yeah, certainly we'll tag team on this. It's a terrific question. And when you say cost, I think it has to be the full cost. So it has to be, what is it competitively to what the rest of the world can do? I think it also has to be right up front, sustainability implications. What is the fresh water that's required? What is the energy intensity? What is the chemical intensity? So when we're thinking about developing and expanding our resource assets, it's just absolutely necessary to be competitive. And so, the way that I think the U.S. can really focus in on being competitive is right up front, making sure that we're taking advantage of although limited lithium resources that we have in North America and the US relative to the rest of the world. That means for us to be competitive, we need to be even better at recovering every precious atom of lithium that we have. And what that means is that we need to be really good at technologies. And these are the extraction and purification technologies that you use to recover that. And yet we also need to be considering, as we introduce or consider these new technologies, it's more than just the purity, the lithium product that we create. It's the sustainability contributions that we talked about before. I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Thanks very much. Let me build on that. I think those are all good points. Look, there's a lot of lithium in the world. There's a huge amount. The challenge is, how do you produce it in an environmentally responsible and commercially viable way? That's the big challenge. I think one of the big advantages we see with the potential for Salton Sea lithium is on the ESG side and environmental social governance. This issue, when you look at the hard rock mining in Australia, you look at the salas, the big evaporation ponds in South America, I think there's going to be increasing pressure from stakeholders, probably, I think, from community groups and environmental justice groups and community-based organizations in those countries to pressure the buyers, the off-takers of lithium, to look for more environmentally responsible ways to obtain that lithium. I think that's a big competitive advantage we'll have in the US. I think at the government level, and Assemblymember Garcia, you know this, we've got to look at incentives. What can the state government, what can the federal government do to provide incentives, whether it's workforce development, employee new hires, investment tax credits. California has a huge number of programs, sales tax exemptions, other programs that still make it viable, but do not take away from the community benefits that would come. And that's a fine line. We've been processing geothermal brine for 40 years, 50,000 gallons a minute. I mean, we've got the lithium, it's there. This is not alchemy. So that's the challenge. Doing this both environmentally responsibly and commercially viable. And I do think that we've got a number of tools, and that's one good thing about this Lithium Valley Commission, is looking at ways to make it work for everyone, not just the industry, but the community as well, and for the environment.
So Chair Paz, how do we ensure that the high lithium demand and this rapid pace of innovation doesn't accelerate faster than the free, prior, and informed consent of local communities can keep up?
Yeah, and that's a great question. In the last couple years, the lithium industry has been receiving government investments. And these government investments naturally are ensuring that the technologies are right, that we can do this in both an ecological way as well as a business friendly way, right? But what we haven't seen is a direct investment so that communities can be at the table. So if we're talking about community benefit agreements, to be able to live up to our values of equity and inclusion, there needs to be a similar intent in ensuring that our communities have access to the capacity building that they're going to need to be able to be at the table, to be able to ask for themselves what the benefits beyond the jobs it is that these communities are looking for when we're talking about the extraction of lithium from, beneath their own grounds. We are also going to need to make sure that they're ready to be talking about labor standards, that they're able to talk about, workforce agreements, labor workforce agreements. So there is a whole array that I can summarize as capacity building investments that are needed in our region to ensure, again, that lithium doesn't take off the ground before the community is ready to be negotiating on their own terms the direction that they would like this community to go in.
So as I mentioned in the outset, the United States produces relatively little of the lithium that we use across the globe. And one of my questions for Mr. Weisgall is, will the lithium extraction technologies that we do have today operate at the much, much larger scales that are going to be needed to meet this growing demand, or are new innovations required?
Well, I think we can get there, Michael, but we've got to do it a step at a time. I've been quoted, but I'll say it again. I mean, as a company, we've got to crawl before we walk, and we've got to walk before we run. How did we begin this process? Believe it or not, it was government R&D funding. It was a $6 million grant, a competitive grant that we won from the California Energy Commission, matching it with $6 million of our own funds, simply to build a 1/10 commercial scale demonstration project to show that we actually can recover lithium from our geothermal brine. By the way, that's been ahead of schedule, and indeed we plan to get that commissioned next month. So that's moving forward. Now, as I said, that's 1/10 commercial scale, but you don't make a multi-billion-dollar investment until you prove out the technology. As I said, this is not alchemy. The lithium is there, but at the same time, no one has ever on a commercial basis shown that you can successfully recover lithium from the geothermal brine. It's been done in the lab. It will be done in our demonstration plant, but we do think we can scale that up. If we are successful in scaling it up, we could produce as much as 90,000 metric tons a year of lithium carbonate equivalent in a world market today of about 300,000 metric tons. Now that market will increase tenfold. So, our 90,000 metric tons may seem less, but boy, for today, that's a big chunk of the market and more than enough to meet US demand. So I think it can be done, but there will be need. We're always looking at new technologies. Glenn alluded very briefly to water usage. We've got to find ways to use even less water. We hope to use 90% less water than is used in the South American technologies, but we've got to reduce that even more. So we're always looking for better mousetraps to make this more effective, but we think we've got the basic technology down.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I see that this issue of efficiency as being the real key, right? Because as you said, the lithium is there. But as Dr. Murfeld said earlier, lithium is a small fraction of all of the atoms that are present in most of our lithium resources. And so it's not just a matter of understanding where the lithium is, but understanding everything about the system, the water, all of the other constituents that need to be separated. And so that I think is really the key from getting things to sort of the bench scale to really doing this at a full commercial scale. one of the questions that I have for Assemblymember Garcia is that it's interesting to think about what the risk is that decreasing lithium demand due to international development or advances in recycling, for example, might fundamentally alter the lithium resource landscape in the next 5 years, and how we might approach that from for example, a policy perspective.
I think we're seeing that happen as we speak. The interest of moving in this transitional period to ensure a much more sustainable and reliable source of energy production that will have the co-benefits that we're looking for in communities throughout the country, in this case, specifically in our own backyard. For us, I think it's extremely important, as was mentioned earlier, the handful of policies that need to be discussed both by the local community and the experts around the table to help us get this off the ground, not just in our state of California, but to see the benefits throughout the entire country. Look, I'm really enthusiastic to see how well aligned these efforts are taking place when it comes to the local, the state, and the federal policymaking circles, because most of the time it's the community and the state having a very different perspective on how and where we should be going. And here, and I appreciate the work that's being done by the Lithium Valley Commission to help move this conversation along in the most responsible manner that it can be. A lot more work to be done, of course, but nevertheless, folks are at the table. They have some decision-making authority and recommending how this all could look. But at the end of the day, it really is about setting up a framework where the community is the direct beneficiary of the outcomes that we're all hoping to achieve.
Thank you. I'm curious, how do we ensure that the lithium resource exploration and use is developed and protected? And what are some of the other key elements to supporting what we hope to be the development of this new domestic lithium workforce? Dr. Murfeld, I'll let you start off with this one. Dr. Murfeld, we lost your audio, I think. I'm still having trouble hearing. Can anybody else hear Dr. Murfeld, or is that just me? No, we've lost some audio.
Can you hear me, Michael?
I can, yeah. Jonathan, why don't we go to you and see if Dr. Murfeld can get the audio issue sorted out.
I got to tell you, I've lost video, but you can't hear me.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, let me jump in. Obviously you've got on the intellectual property, we've got, provisional patents, but I think part of your question is that workforce development. And, it does tie into community outreach and the like. Imperial County, where we're moving ahead, has the 5th highest unemployment rate of all 3,000 counties in the United States. It's got a poverty rate of over 24%. That has an impact across the community. What are we doing? We are working with local high schools and the local community college to advance STEM curriculum. We're funding upgrades. We're providing scholarships there for students taking STEM courses. We're developing internships for on-the-job training, hoping that some students can divide their time between classroom and actually working on site, because we have existing geothermal plants. We've got a workforce of over 200, and to introduce lithium, and the skills there are pretty similar to what they are for geothermal. We'll of course need more chemists and the like, but that workforce development it's going to be a big challenge. There's just no question about it. Again, here's an area where the state of California has good workforce training programs. We're working also with tribal leaders. We really want to have a local workforce. Imperial County is a tough environment. I don't know how many days of the year the temperature's over 100 degrees, but it can get up to 120. But there's a dedicated workforce there. But I must say, importing a workforce is not going to make sense. So we're really, and that's one of the areas of de-risking, and it's one area of incentives, which is really developing that workforce. And as everybody knows, with the Great Resignation, I mean, attracting another 200, 400 workers for lithium production, it's not going to be easy. So still a lot of challenges, but I think we can get there. Maybe Glenn is back on here.
Yeah, it looks like we got Glenn. Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay, Glenn, that's great. Just a refresher, we're talking about resource exploration, how to protect it, and how to develop the lithium workforce.
Yeah, and particularly on the front end of that. When I think about protecting technology and protect the resource, in a sense, the best thing that we can do is develop solutions that matter. Okay, if we develop technologies and they end up on the shelf and we don't commercialize these things, the value of an underutilized idea really diminishes very quickly. So I think the best thing that we can do is develop technologies and resources that actually play into the market. I think that's the first hurdle that we need to always keep in mind. We have some phenomenal resources in the United States. The only point that I would probably differ on, maybe from others that have raised here, is like, even if we develop these resources, if you look at the projected demands for lithium in the United States, it's going to be a fraction. So we need to think maybe even more broadly, as if we do develop technologies, how do we leverage them around the world? Because this is not just a United States opportunity and problem, it's a bigger world problem. So if we can develop technologies here in the United States that allow us to get access to the limited resources that we have, how do we leverage that elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, I agree. Develop an innovation space. Chair Paz, is there anything that you'd like to add to that point?
I'll add to the piece on workforce, and I'll maybe elaborate on what Jonathan rightly said. And I think in order to achieve the type of future that Jonathan painted for us, we really need to diversify our workforce toolkit, right? We have the majority of the workforce in Imperial County that is traveling outside of the county to either San Diego or Riverside County for jobs. So if we have the jobs, how do we capture that workforce so that they can stay in Imperial County and again achieve the vision of the benefits staying within the county and the area? So again, the main point is that we diversify, that we're targeting the different segments of the population, both, from, the elementary, high schools, the STEM programs, those are great, but we also have a workforce that is ready to take on these jobs, and we need to invest in them so that we're reducing any barriers that they might have to access these jobs.
Yeah, that perfectly segues into the next question about barriers in general, or what any of our panelists here envision as being other significant barriers or challenges that the domestic lithium development progress faces across the U.S., being salton sea geothermal brine or other resources. I'll open this up, but whoever wants to jump in here, please feel free.
I'll jump in, assuming you can hear me. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, still good.
Okay. Sorry, don't have video. Kind of building a little bit on what others have said, and especially from Chair Paz, I think two other big challenges, and they do go hand in hand, are communication and education, especially in the area around the Salton Sea. We've had a virtual town hall meeting last year. I've been spending this morning planning for one for next week, where we want to bring in as many community-based organizations, environmental justice groups, as we can, to show them what we are doing already with geothermal, what we have been doing for 35 years with our facilities, and what the plans are for lithium. There are lots of questions. And I must say, my own plan is to try to get as much Q&A in as possible from local community leaders as we move forward. For example, there are still a lot of folks who think that we're drilling in the Salton Sea. Now, obviously, this is not U.S. lithium, but where we are right now, we have a Salton Sea, which is, we can spend an hour on that topic. It's a huge environmental disaster, getting worse, but it's also 43 feet deep. Our geothermal wells go 2 miles down under the Earth's surface, so we're getting our geothermal brine and the lithium, from under the Earth's surface, but simply making that one educational point is critical, not to mention explaining what we're doing and just having ongoing community outreach. I think, there has to be community buy-in to make this work. I mean, I'd like to be able to show, as a company, the best thing we can do is get good local hires, put folks on a path for solid career development, whether it's lab technicians or chemists or electricians or environmental specialists, but be able to look back and say that we did lithium production the right way for the environment, the right way for the market, as we've discussed, and the right way for the local community. But we've got to bring folks along. And there's a pretty bad history in Imperial County, I'll leave it at that, of development. And we've got to do better. And certainly as a company, we're committed to doing this the right way with the community, as well as the environment, as well as the market.
I want to jump in here too, from the local level, because what we're talking about, the reasons for doing this, I think, are important, right? We've talked about national security. We've talked about climate change, and we're talking a lot about the economic prosperity of a region that has been neglected for many, many years. And I think what we need to be thinking about is how does the collective we hold on to these three elements, along with what it really will take for us to be able to achieve all of them. And this is, I think, where the environmental justice principles and the equity principles come in place, that we need to hold them all in order to be doing them right. And if we only focus on the extraction of the lithium or getting it to commercial level, which is important, we're only hitting one piece. What we want to do ideally is that we want to capture as much of the supply chain segments in this region. And we need to be ready for that, right? So there needs to be an equally intense investment in ensuring that our community is ready. I talked about capacity earlier for community members to be at the table, but we're also talking about an area that has a very weak infrastructure. So we're talking about building a new industry, being able to hold these supply chain segments. We really need to invest in building up the infrastructure of this region as well.
Yeah, those are terrific comments, and I love the ecosystem, I think, sentiment that has just been shared in both those comments, because it's really the ecosystem with the community and the environment. I also feel very strongly that it's that ecosystem with the whole value chain of the supply chain, if you will, not only at the front end, but how you integrate the lithium and the level of purity that we can get it to integrate well into the cathode active chemistry, to integrate into the battery configuration, that will integrate into the vehicle roadmap. Those are the sort of value chain considerations that I think we want to think about. We have some tremendous intellectual know-how in the country, and sometimes it's in our universities, sometimes it's in our national laboratories, sometimes it's in our companies. Bringing that together as part of this ecosystem, I think, is part of the solution, and it can't end at the lithium atom where the lithium product is, you all, I think, reinforced. We got to think of it all the way through to the batteries and to the electric vehicles that are going to be on our roads.
Michael, I'll just share that I think everyone has kind of captured this exactly how it needs to happen. And I think in practicality, we need to look down the road a few years and be able to say that what happened with this industry getting off the ground in Imperial County was able to contribute to a better Salton Sea. and that as a result of that, we were able to improve the public health circumstances that people face in our region. As a result of that and the jobs that come to the area, that people were able to have a long-term and reliable opportunity to build equity and buy a home and send their kids to the good schools nearby and in this university system of California. And that ultimately, that the decisions that we made were able to improve the quality of life for a region, as was said earlier, that has suffered chronically from the highest unemployments in the country. And it's an area that was hit very hard during the pandemic, that shed light on a tremendous amount of deficiencies that exist in both government and in the communities as it relates to the infrastructure of the overall well-being of this community. And so, we want to look back and say that these conversations were able to at least forecast as much as we possibly could to ensure that the people were the direct beneficiaries of this effort. And clearly, what we're doing here is going to contribute to a much broader segment of the world population. And of course, as cliche and cheesy as it may sound, we are working towards making sure that we're saving the planet for future generations to come.
On that note, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I really appreciate you all being here and contributing your perspectives and your expertise to this topic. This is a really important discussion. Very excited to have had this with all of you. We're going to continue a portion of this discussion tomorrow at 11:25 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to be taking a deeper dive into the Salton Sea specifically and having a roundtable discussion with a number of participants where we can touch on some of these topics that we've addressed here. But for now, this concludes our panel on building out a domestic lithium resource. And so I'd just like to thank once again our esteemed panelists for joining us and sharing their expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.